So let's say you had, if you had an object like this and you had a different object like that, and you had some logic to say in a chip to say which one would stay existing. So you have like a randomizer, and we'll just power them. Every time you play time, it's going to pick a different one. Now, if you were using this with emitters, so you've got an emitter, and just going to put it there. It's going to emit that group with the logic and everything, and it's going to emit over here. Cool. So now normally you just see a tower or a sphere, so that's fine. Let's add a thing that we can always see. That'll be easier to understand. Cool. So if you emit this object, then it's going to turn the original object off. You can still turn it back on again. So if you leave it back on and now run it, it's selected towers, and now it's always going to just have a tower because it's copying whatever live thing that is. So if we try a couple more, there we go. So now it's only emitting spheres in this for that emitter's whole lifetime. So stuff in here can change live during the scene and affect what the emitter is actually spitting out. So if we even edited this live, right? So emit a few of those. Now we remove that. Now new ones are using this version. If you wanted to be thermo efficient, you could use a destroyer to destroy things you don't need. So maybe in one, maybe sometimes it will destroy the tower and sometimes it will destroy the ball. Yep, and we use the randomizer to do that. So you do that and run time. So there's like a frame where you see both of them, but then you only see one of them. So if this was emitted outside of the shot, then you wouldn't see that flicker of all of it being shown. Alternatively, you can use a keyframe to like make these invisible and use these to destroy that chip. So to destroy something, you grab the affected objects. So you can plug it into actual gadgets. So I can plug it into that microchip. So it's got this funny little nub on the side. That's going into the same microchip that is holding these gadgets. And do the same for this. Just plug it into there, I think. Yeah. So that will destroy all of this, including the keyframe, which you'll have to turn on. So then it will stop being invisible again. So let's see if that works. Yeah, so then you have like a frame of none of it being visible. And then once it's selected it, then it will be visible again. So if we go back in here and delete that part and turn on preview invisibility, all we ever see is the randomly selected object. Maybe you want it to, after a certain amount of time, just use a timeline. For a certain amount of time, let's say this keyframe makes this a different color like that. Right, so then it turns red, and because that's got keep changes on, it just stays red. That works fine. However, if you record the position of the actual group within the world, so let's say maybe you want it to suddenly go squiffy like that, and yeah, then it kind of goes squiffy like that. It's fine. Now let's turn it off so that just the emitted objects work. So instead of just kind of suddenly going at a jaunty angle at this point in the timeline for these emitted objects is actually being dragged over here, because that is because the position of this object is recorded in the world instead of the group. So if we move that group, this whole object has its position saved, and as you move the group to different positions, it uses that new position. So now they'll get kind of dragged over to that one. So if we put that on like that, then it will kind of animate over to it. Like that, you can see it better. So that could be cool if that's what you want to happen. Maybe let's make an example. Maybe you have like a particle. It could be a fleck or whatever you want it to be. And then you got some glow or whatever. And you had that on, and you had a keyframe. If we group those and emit that object, like so, don't need any speed, and then we change where it's going to emit at. If instead of recording that, we record the actual position of the ball of that whole group, so like this whole group, record that position, then we have this kind of ease in like that, and then we emit that object, and we turn this one off. Oh no, we just link it like that, and then we have it start in a different position. Then it'll play that timeline and get to that position. So if this was like moved around or something, now they're trying to get to this position because those ones emitted are trying to get to that position in the scene. So you could probably get some cool effects. I'd like to thank Xcantaloupe, MDKD99, Shadow of Callus, and all of my other supporters for making this tutorial possible. If you'd like me to continue making these tutorials and helping creators across the internet, you can find out how to support me in the link in the description. Thanks for your consideration, and I'll see you in the next one.